If you ask anyone today to draw an alien, chances are they will sketch the exact same creature. A short, pale gray being with a giant, bulbous head, pitch-black wraparound almond eyes, no nose, and tiny slit-like lips. And if you ask them what aliens do when they visit Earth, they will tell you about bright tractor beams pulling cars off dark country roads, missing time, strange medical examinations on cold steel tables, and mysterious star maps. But where did these hyper-specific pop culture tropes actually come from? They were not created by a Hollywood movie director, a science fiction novelist, or a cartoon animator. They all originated from a single, terrifying late-night drive through the White Mountains of New Hampshire in September 1961. Welcome back to Cosmic Clueless. Today we are diving into the grandfather of all alien abduction stories, the Betty and Barney Hill incident. This is the legendary encounter that established every single cliché of extraterrestrial kidnapping, introduced the famous gray aliens to human consciousness, and started decades of intense scientific, psychological, and ufological debate. So buckle up, grab your tinfoil hat, and let us watch what happens when our unlucky Stickman proxy gets pulled into the world's very first high-profile alien medical exam. To understand how this iconic story unfolded, we have to travel back in time to the night of September 19th, 1961. Betty and Barney Hill were a respected, ordinary American couple living in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney worked for the United States Postal Service, while Betty was a dedicated social worker. They were returning home from a relaxing vacation in Niagara Falls in Montreal, driving their 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air down a quiet, pitch-black highway surrounded by dense forests. It was around 10:30 at night. The roads were completely empty. There were no streetlights, no cell phones, and no traffic for miles. Suddenly, Betty noticed a bright, shimmering point of light moving across the dark sky near the moon. At first, she thought it was just a falling star or a bright satellite. But as they drove further down Route 3, the light began moving in completely unnatural, erratic patterns. It was stepping, hopping, and descending lower into the tree line. Barney, being a practical and pragmatic man, assumed it was a commercial airliner or a military plane from nearby Pease Air Force Base. But the light kept following their car, matching their exact speed. Curiosity got the better of them. Barney stopped the Chevrolet right in the middle of the dark road near Indian Head, grabbed a pair of high-powered binoculars, and stepped out into the night air. What he saw through the lenses wiped away every rational explanation in a single second. Hovering silent and motionless just 80 to 100 feet above the treetops was a massive, pancake-shaped flying craft, glowing with brilliant white light. Around its outer edge was a curved row of flat windows, and standing behind those windows, staring directly down at Barney through the glass, were a dozen humanoid figures dressed in tight, dark, shiny uniforms. As Barney watched in sheer horror, the strange craft began descending closer to his car. Long, thin, glowing fins extended from the sides of the disc, and a low, rhythmic humming sound echoed through the silent forest. Barney panicked. He dropped his binoculars, sprinted back to the car, slammed the door shut, and screamed at Betty, "They are going to capture us!" He slammed his foot on the gas pedal, engine roaring, trying to flee down the highway at top speed. But suddenly, a strange series of sharp, rhythmic beeping and buzzing sounds, like electronic coins dropping on a metal tin, echoed through the trunk of their car. A wave of heavy, unnatural drowsiness instantly washed over the couple. The steering wheel felt heavy, their eyelids drooped, their minds went completely numb, and the world faded to absolute black. Now, picture our Stickman proxy playing the role of Barney Hill in this exact situation. He tries to step on the gas pedal to escape the flying saucer, but his Stickman foot slips off the pedal, hits the emergency handbrake, and spins the Chevy into a violent 400-degree tailspin right off a rocky cliff. The car explodes in a giant fireball before the aliens even get a chance to beam him up. Classic Stickman luck. But for the real Betty and Barney Hill, the story was just beginning. When they finally snapped out of their hypnotic trance and woke up, the strange electronic buzzing sound hummed through the car trunk a second time. They found themselves driving down the highway near Ashland, New Hampshire, nearly 35 miles further down the road than where they were when the light appeared. The sky was beginning to brighten with the early morning dawn, but something felt terribly, deeply wrong. They looked at their watches. Both of their mechanical wristwatches had completely stopped ticking and would never work again. When they finally pulled into their driveway at home, they realized that a journey that should have taken 2 hours had somehow taken over 4 hours. 2 entire hours of their lives had been completely erased from their memories. They had no idea where they had been, what they had done, or why their clothes were torn, scuffed, and covered in a strange, chalky pink dust. For days after the incident, Betty and Barney Hill were haunted by an overwhelming sense of dread. Their physical belongings held strange, unexplained clues that made 0 sense. Barney noticed that the leather toes of his dress shoes were deeply scraped and scuffed, as if he had been dragged forcefully across rough gravel. The strap on his binoculars was snapped. Betty's favorite blue dress was torn at the zipper, and when she hung it up in her closet, she noticed it was covered in a powdery pinkish-white residue. Oddly enough, when she left the dress hanging outside, the pink powder dissolved into thin air, leaving bizarre, discolored spots on the fabric that turned hard like plastic. Even weirder were the physical marks on their car. Scattered across the shiny metal trunk of their Bel Air were dozens of strange, nickel-sized glowing spots. When Barney held a compass near these spots, the magnetic needle spun out of control, wildly whirring around in circles. But the psychological trauma was far worse than the damaged property. Betty began experiencing vivid, terrifying nightmares every single night. In her dreams, she saw short, pale figures surrounding their car on the dark highway, forcing them to walk up a glowing ramp into a metallic, circular craft, and strapping them to cold tables for strange medical procedures. Barney, on the other hand, developed severe, paralyzing anxiety, high blood pressure, and a bizarre ring of painful warts around his waist. Desperate to understand what happened during those 2 missing hours, the couple sought medical help. In late 1963, they were referred to Dr. Benjamin Simon, a highly respected Boston psychiatrist and neurologist specializing in medical hypnosis and trauma recovery for military veterans. Dr. Simon conducted over 7 months of deep hypnotic regression sessions on Betty and Barney separately. He placed them into deep trances, recorded their voices on audio tape, and questioned them about that September night in New Hampshire. What came out of those audio tapes shocked the medical and scientific community to its core. Working in completely isolated rooms, without talking to each other between sessions, Betty and Barney told almost identical, step-by-step stories of what happened during those missing 2 hours. Under hypnosis, Barney recounted the terrifying moment their car engine stalled on the dark highway. He described several short humanoid beings walking toward them through the fog. He tried to fight, but he felt completely paralyzed, like his body was asleep while his mind was screaming. He remembered keeping his eyes squeezed shut out of sheer terror, but feeling himself being dragged across the dirt road, his shoes scraping against the rocks. He was led into a brightly lit, sterile room with curved metallic walls. Now, picture our Stickman proxy lying on that stainless steel examination table in Barney's place. The gray alien leader steps up to our Stickman, holding a long, glowing silver syringe with a sharp needle attached. The alien leans over to extract a skin sample, but our Stickman panics, flexes his hyper-flexible Stickman elbow, and accidentally punches the alien right in its oversized, bulbous eye. The alien's head pops like a pressurized water balloon, spraying glowing blue extraterrestrial brain fluid all over the sterile operating room. Classic Stickman retaliation. But for Barney under hypnosis, there was no fighting back. He describes the beings placing a soft, flexible cup over his groin to collect biological samples, scraping his skin with a flat metal instrument, and examining his spine, mouth, and ears. When the doctors asked Barney to describe the beings, he gave the very first detailed account of what we now call the gray alien. Short, hairless beings with smooth gray skin, small flat noses, thin slits for mouths, and massive dark almond eyes that wrapped around the sides of their heads, staring into his soul with a hypnotic, overwhelming force. Meanwhile, in her separate hypnosis session, Betty revealed even more mind-bending details. She described the aliens cutting a lock of her hair, scraping her fingernails, and inserting a long, sharp needle straight into her navel to perform a painful pregnancy test. When Betty asked the alien leader where they came from, the entity pulled out a large, three-dimensional star map hanging on the wall of the craft. The map showed dozens of glowing metallic spheres connected by solid and dotted lines representing trade routes and exploration paths. Under hypnosis, Betty was able to sketch this star map in exact detail on a piece of paper for Dr. Simon. At the time, astronomer and radar analysts looked at Betty's sketch and dismissed it as random, meaningless dots. But a few years later, an astronomer named Marjorie Fish constructed a three-dimensional model of known star systems in our cosmic neighborhood. To everyone's absolute shock, Betty's sketch matched a real, specific star system perfectly. The map pointed directly to a binary star system located 39 light-years away from Earth in the southern constellation of Reticulum, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli. Had an ordinary American social worker with no background in astronomy somehow drawn a precise interstellar navigation chart used by alien pilots? Or was this entire traumatic memory constructed by her creative, subconscious mind? The story of Betty and Barney Hill blew wide open in 1965 when a Boston newspaper leaked the confidential transcripts of their hypnosis sessions. Overnight, this quiet, unassuming couple was thrust into the national spotlight. Books were written, a hit movie starring James Earl Jones was filmed, and the story became an instant global phenomenon. Suddenly, thousands of people around the world started reporting identical experiences: mysterious lights on dark roads, missing hours of time, metallic circular craft, and short gray beings performing strange medical tests on cold tables. But as the alien abduction craze swept the globe, scientists, psychologists, and skeptical researchers began picking the story apart, piece by piece, searching for a rational explanation. Let us start with Dr. Benjamin Simon himself, the very psychiatrist who placed the couple under hypnosis. Interestingly enough, Dr. Simon never actually believed Betty and Barney were abducted by physical aliens from outer space. His professional medical conclusion was much more grounded. Betty had experienced a series of vivid, terrifying nightmares caused by the extreme stress of driving on dark, dangerous roads at night. Over time, her dreams became so detailed and realistic to her that she truly believed they were real memories. And what about Barney? Dr. Simon concluded that Barney, listening to his wife obsessively discuss her vivid dreams every single day, absorbed her narrative into his own subconscious. Under hypnosis, his brain simply repeated Betty's nightmare scenarios, creating what psychologists call a shared false memory, or folie à deux. What about the physical symptoms and missing time? Modern neuroscientists point to a well-documented sleep condition known as sleep paralysis, accompanied by hypnagogic hallucinations. When a person experiences sleep paralysis while driving late at night due to severe exhaustion, their body loses motor control while their mind remains halfway conscious. The brain can hallucinate shadow figures, glowing lights, floating sensations, and terrifying feelings of chest pressure, the exact ingredients of an alien abduction experience. Skeptics also targeted the famous Zeta Reticuli star map. Critics argued that out of the thousands of stars in our cosmic neighborhood, if you draw random lines between dots on a page, you can eventually align those dots with almost any constellation if you look hard enough. Furthermore, astronomers pointed out that 12 days before Barney's hypnosis session, a popular sci-fi television show called The Outer Limits aired an episode featuring alien creatures with giant, wraparound almond eyes. The exact same physical description Barney gave under trance. Now, picture our Stickman proxy sitting in a scientist's laboratory, trying to prove that his own alien abduction story is 100% real. He holds up a piece of metallic foil he claims he pulled off a flying saucer, shouting, "Look, it is indestructible extraterrestrial alloy." The scientist calmly pulls out a cheap pocket lighter, flicks a tiny flame under the foil, and the metallic sheet instantly catches fire, exploding into a giant ball of purple smoke that burns our Stickman into a tiny, crispy pile of Stickman charcoal. Classic scientific debunking. But despite all the skeptical debunking, several strange facts about the Hill incident remain completely unsolved to this day. Why did both of their mechanical watches stop working at the exact same moment on that dark highway? What caused the bizarre magnetic anomalies on the trunk of their car that made compass needles spin out of control? And why would a quiet, dignified couple who never sought fame or money stick to their terrifying story for the rest of their lives, despite facing intense public ridicule? Whether you believe Betty and Barney Hill were genuinely snatched by extraterrestrial scientists from Zeta Reticuli, or were victims of a complex, shared psychological nightmare, their story changed pop culture forever. They inadvertently wrote the original blueprint for every alien encounter story that followed. Every time you see a gray alien on a movie screen, a sci-fi poster, or a YouTube thumbnail, you are looking at a memory that was born on a dark New Hampshire highway back in 1961. So, what do you think? Was it a real interstellar medical exam, or just the most famous false memory in human history? If you enjoyed this dive into the origins of alien lore, hit that like button, subscribe to Cosmic Clueless, and drop a comment below. Have you ever experienced missing time or seen strange lights on a quiet night drive? Watch the skies, stay awake at the wheel, and don't look at the stars too closely.